Today I'm going to take you behind the scenes of my 70s glam fashion shoot. I'm using a star filter, DIY background, and beautiful gels. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here. One of my favorite things to shoot is what I call vintage modern. So I take inspiration from the past and I try to add a little bit of flair to make it my own with something from the present. And that is exactly what we're doing here today with my 1970s glam inspired fashion shoot. Where I began for the inspiration of this shoot is one of my favorite things to do is being inspired by cheap, inexpensive DIY props. In this case, I went online and I found a $10 sparkly party decoration background. And I saw this and it was screaming 70s vibes. So that's where I started with my inspiration, and I've hung it between two C-stand and C-stand arms to act as my backdrop. All right, so the next part of this is the styling. So if I'm going for 1970s, do I want to do it with the lighting or the background or the toning, or do I want it to do it with the styling and the makeup, and I have to make a decision? Or do I make the styling where I add my modern twist? All right, so for the shirt that we have on, I went with a little bit of sequins, going a little bit vintage. And we actually got this shirt from a department store in the last chance section for just $15. So if you keep your eyes open, you can have some amazing finds that are just regular clothing on sale. For the makeup, we decided to go with glitter, embrace the vintage feel, but our hair is where we added a little bit of a modern twist. All right, so we've got the beautiful background, the beautiful styling, and now it's time to add in lights. I'm shooting with Profoto D2s, and I'm going to begin first with my background light. Now, when I'm thinking of 70s vibes, I'm thinking of warm tones. I'm thinking of oranges and yellows, maybe even some greens. And so I'm going to use lighting to help me achieve some of the color palette that will give me that vintage vibe. So where I began is with a single strobe, bare bulb on the background. And with that strobe, I've added an orange gel because that's going to give me some of that warm toning that will help me achieve the vintage look. So let's start with that first light. And I'll have you just look right there, perfect. You can see that these streamers are really being transformed by adding a gel, and it's giving me a little bit of that vintage background. But there's one more thing to consider. For this shoot, I've selected a Canon R5 and the Canon RF 50mm 1.2. Now the reason I selected the 1.2 lens is because right now I am shooting at a 2.2, a really wide aperture. So what it's doing is it's really softening that background, and when the light hits it, it's giving me these little sparkles, these little highlights that are giving me that glam vintage disco vibe. But I want to push it a little bit further. And so this is where I'm going to add one of my favorite tools for adding a little bit of creativity. We are going to add a star filter. My star filter is going to take some of those highlights and kick them out, give me a little starburst behind, which is a total disco vibe. Okay, and same exact thing, beautiful. So this is beautiful, and you can see how much of a difference just adding the star filter has made in giving us the vintage look. All right, so far, all I have is my streamers, a gel on the background light, and a star filter. So now I need to layer in my main lights. So first, let's actually light her face, and I'm going to do so with a beauty dish and a grid, because that's going to give me a really flattering quality of light to her face. I'm loving the beautiful highlights that it's kissing across her cheekbones, beautiful on her skin, but I think I could do more to get that 70s look. So as I look at the 70s color palette, one of the things I often see is really warm tones. We've already brought the warm tones in and the orange gel in the background. But now what I'm going to do is add a yellow gel, and I'm going to do so in the front to fill in the shadow. So on the right-hand side of the frame, I'm going to have this light at very low power. And all it's meant to do is be just a little bit of fill light, add just a little bit of shine to the subject's face, and do so with a warm palette, specifically using a yellow gel. Okay? You can see exactly what this gel did. It didn't completely eliminate the shadows, but you're really catching that color on her beautiful cheekbones. And so it's, again, still moving me in that vintage color palette. What I like about this setup is that I can face my subject either direction and it's still flattering on her face. So can you face the other direction? So you can see that it still looks beautiful. All right, so I've got my three lights. I've got a light in the background with an orange gel. I've got a beauty dish with a grid. I've got a bare bulb with a yellow gel filling in the shadows. And now, how do I make it feel even more vintage? I already got the styling and all of those elements. Will you do so with color grading? So let's take a look real quick at how I'm going to change the colors to give me a little bit of an old filmic vibe. All right, so what we're going to do is, in this example, I'm in Capture One, and I'm going to pop over to the color balance. And I can use this color wheel to add a little bit of kiss of color to both the shadows and the highlights. So I'm going to begin in the shadows, and we're actually going to give it a little bit of a magenta tone. And that's giving me kind of an aged film look. To emphasize this even more, I'm going to go in the highlights. I'm going to drag the highlights to yellows. And then for the entire shot, I'm actually going to pop over and decrease the saturation a bit, and then just pop that contrast. So to see the before and after, I feel like that's really moving me in the direction of 1970s glam. All right, because I'm shooting tethered, what I'm going to do is take those color tones that I've just adjusted, that color grading, and I'm going to have that applied to every shot that I've taken. Now I'm shooting raw, so of course I can always go back and change my mind, but as I'm shooting, it's going to give me that color grade, that vintage feel. So I've got all the elements together, and now it's time to get the shot. Okay, so I'm gonna actually have you shoot in profile, just like that. It's beautiful. All right, so there we have it, our 1970s glam. And you'll notice that all of the pieces work together to give the feel of vintage modern. It's the styling, it's the background, it's the lighting, and it's the toning. So if you want to see the gear used in the making of this video, be sure to check out the links in the description below and visit Adorama.com. And of course, you're going to want to like and subscribe because I have a lot more videos just like these coming your way. Now, if you want to see more behind the scenes shoots and you want to learn about my lighting techniques, be sure to check out learnwithlindsay.com. See you next time.